Hello, everyone. My name is Lakey Lude, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the MHS Talent Insights Series live session titled, What is the Impact of Your Beliefs on Your Emotional Intelligence? Hosted by David Cory, President and CEO of the Emotional Intelligence Training Company. We are thrilled to have you all here with us today, and we would like to begin by telling you a little bit about MHS. For over 40 years, MHS has provided trusted data-driven solutions across our core disciplines. Our MHS Talent Solutions help to drive success in professional settings. We understand the elements of effective leadership and the requirements for an effective workplace. With our capabilities and tool sets, we help clients identify and cultivate talent. Now, without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce you to David Cory. David Cory is the founder of one of the first companies to offer leadership development based on emotional intelligence. Since 1998, David has been a training partner of MHS and has used the EQI 2.0 and the EQ 360s with leaders around the world. David is also a renowned speaker. Keynote speaking highlights include the Harvard Medical School, Asia HRD Congress, and the World of Tomorrow Leadership Conference. Let's start the webinar. Over to you, David.
Thanks, Lakey. It's my pleasure to be here, and I want to start by talking about this photograph that you're looking at. So the gentleman on the right is, if you do not know, Dr. Steven Stein, who is the founder of MHS. And I want to tell you a little bit about how we met. It was in 1997, right after the release of the first EQI, and Steve was speaking at conferences talking about the world's first scientifically validated assessment for emotional intelligence. And I was very excited to see this breakout session. The conference was in Calgary. I came from Vancouver to the conference, and at the time I was teaching leadership courses for a public post-secondary institution called the Open Learning Agency, which had a corporate training department. So I was so excited to hear Steve talk about the EQI and about this incredible foundation of skills that everybody needs and that nobody seemed to be teaching. So anyway, I was one of those annoying conference participants that hung around after everybody had left and started peppering Steve with questions as he was packing up his papers and packing up his computer. And then I ended up driving into the airport talking about how we were going to work together. And it's been almost 27 years, and it's been an incredibly rewarding partnership, and I'm extremely grateful for everything that MHS has done for me and for us. But like you mentioned, that I started one of the first companies to offer emotional intelligence training, so back in the when we first named our company, the Emotional Intelligence Training Company, we didn't know anything about search engine optimization. But what we didn't realize was that that's what executives and managers were going to type in when they learned about emotional intelligence through an MBA program or at a conference. They'd come back to their office and they would type in emotional intelligence training, and there we were. And so the global travel started in the early 2000s and didn't really let up until COVID. I was one of those people that was quite thankful that I couldn't leave my house. That was a nice thing for me. I know COVID wasn't great for everybody, but it was good for us. And so we learned how to do good training online, and so that's what we've done. So why beliefs, and why might I talk about beliefs? Well, what are beliefs? First of all, let's go there, and then let's talk about what's the relationship with emotional intelligence, and then some things that might be important to keep in mind moving forward. So I chose this image because this is a cross-section of a group of people on a downtown busy street in some big city. And you can imagine that there are all kinds of beliefs among these people. Beliefs that tend to be more traditional in nature, beliefs that tend to be more progressive in nature. And it is interesting that some people hold beliefs that are more kind of old school, we might call them. And then there are other people who hold beliefs which we might call new school. What's the difference? Why the difference? And why are some people more comfortable holding on to more rigid gender stereotypes? Things about what you might believe about older people or younger people or the generations, and what causes people to shift or change their beliefs, and what difference does this make to their ability to be emotionally intelligent? So we're going to talk about all those things. things, starting with just one quick little well, here's our definition of belief: an acceptance that a statement is true or that something exists. For example, his belief in the value of hard work. That's a belief. And so imagine someone who believes in hard work is working with someone who doesn't, and that's going to create an issue potentially between the two of them. Another take is trust, faith, or confidence in someone or something. I've still got belief in myself, for example. And then I saw this image of this guy sitting on something chained to this big ball of beliefs, and that's an interesting idea too. That beliefs might actually prevent us or weigh us down, prevent us from something. This idea that beliefs could in fact be a ball and chain is something that's kind of an interesting idea that I want to also explore. Anyway, right now, let's go back in time to a time when I was a young person. I spent a year teaching skiing in the German Alps. Now, this is a photograph of the top of the Zugspitze, which is the tallest mountain in Germany, and right next door to the little town of Garmisch-Partenkirchen, where I lived and for my job as a ski instructor. On the very first day of my job as a ski instructor, the owner of the ski school said, we're going to go to the top of the Zugspitze. And we were all excited, thinking, fantastic, we're going to get a few runs in, and this is going to be great. And our belief at the time was that we're all competent skiers and we can, go to the top of the Zugspitze, which is not an easy slope by any means, very challenging. And this is going to be great. And then the owner of the ski school came out from the rental department. He also had a ski rental shop, and handed each of us cross-country skis. Now, those of you who know about downhill skiing know that downhill skis are wider, they have metal edges, your foot is fastened down, you can really control your turning on pretty much any slope. However, cross-country skis are a different story. Back then, they were all wood, no edges, and you wore these fairly flimsy leather boots that were quite malleable, and your heel was not fastened down. So what we believed was going to be we had a belief in ourselves, first of all, as confident and competent, and we were excited about the day, quickly turned to fear and worry. Fear that we might hurt ourselves on the first day of the ski season, and worry about how we're going to get down this extremely steep slope. And so beliefs actually have a relationship with our emotions, and beliefs determine the thought process, or as one researcher calls it, your cognitive appraisal about a stimulus, which then in turn helps us to understand the bodily sensations which make up emotions. I'm going to mention a lot of resources throughout the presentation, and I just want to let you know that you don't have to write them all down. You can simply send an email, and we can easily send you a list of resources that I mentioned. But one of the best books about emotions at the moment is How Emotions Are Made by Lisa Feldman Barrett. And so she talks about this idea of the cognitive appraisal having a concept label, and very much rooted in our socialization and our culture, that we learn how to make emotions based on our bodily sensations. But one thing is true, that our emotions are designed to help us navigate our work and our life in a more enhanced way. So let's look at how the other ways that beliefs are related with emotions. I remember this scene, and you may remember it too, in A League of Their Own, where Tom Hanks is yelling at one of his players. She starts to cry, and what does Jimmy Dugan do? But he just gets incensed that this young woman is crying, and he keeps on repeating over and over again, there's no crying in baseball. And it's a very humorous scene. But You know what? There's a lot of people who believe there's no crying in business, that we should just leave emotions out of it. Some people believe there's a right way and a wrong way to feel. Of course, if you're a male, big boys don't cry is something that we often hear when we're young. And what the message is there is that when we have emotions, that we probably shouldn't acknowledge them or pay attention to them. We should avoid them or deny them. And then expressing emotions is weakness is the other thing that big boys don't cry supports. And so we grow up with these beliefs. These beliefs come from society, from the culture that we're in, from many places. This idea that negative feelings are bad is another one that we occasionally hear from our clients, from the managers who attend our courses and workshops, and from the executives that we coach. And what emotion researchers suggest, rather than calling feelings negative or positive, is to call them more pleasant and less pleasant. That way, we're less judgmental about our own feelings. And there's no bad feelings, they're just our feelings. You might call rain bad weather because you're going on a picnic, but a farmer would call that great weather because, of course, it's watering the crops. So emotions are like the weather. They just are, and then it's about whatever they are, allowing them to be, and then trying to understand what they're related to, what they're trying to tell us, and how to be more intelligent in terms of how we respond to those emotions. So moving right along, you're all familiar with this model, and if you're not familiar with this model, this is the model that was originally created by Dr. Reuven Bar-On in the early 80s, and then was later updated by MHS and is now the model, the EQI model of emotional intelligence, which really answers the question, and this I love about this model, it answers the question, how can we be more intelligent about emotions? So it answers that question because this is what you do. You do these skills. We like to see them as, view them and think about them as skills and competencies. It's a model of human effectiveness. And we say that in order to get past the idea of emotions as somehow, or emotional intelligence rather, as somehow soft and fuzzy, but it's much more than that. It's about being effective as a human being. All these skills were learned by us through our socialization. All skills can be improved if we believe that they are important. If we don't believe they're important, we will disregard them, and we disregard them at our peril and suffer the consequences. You can see the 5 categories that the skills are broken up into. There's self-perception, how you perceive yourself. There's self-expression, how you express yourself. There's a whole interpersonal area, and then there is the explicit commentary on how logic and emotion work together for us in decision making. And then finally, life is stressful. We have to have ways of dealing with and coping with stress, or it could be problematic for us. And of course, let's just dive right in with self-regard. And go through a few of these and talk about how they're related to belief. Self-regard is what you believe to be true about yourself, and how do we come to our beliefs about ourselves? Well, let's look at the beauty industry for a moment. The beauty industry tells us that we don't measure up with their products or their services. The self-help industry tells us the same thing, and the TV movie industry informs us about culture and about who we are. And I think about this little person sitting at the table with what looks to be their father, and in a nice relationship. And I think about this little person and think about them coming home from school and turning on the television. Now, do they see as the main characters in their favorite show people who look like them? people who have a similar skin color, people who have the same gender, or do they get the idea, they get the message from essentially popular culture that their role is more of a peripheral role, more of a being on the margins? And these are ways that pop culture and the media tell us what we should think of ourselves, what we should believe about ourselves. And then of course, there is our family of origin. And our family of origin, our parents taught us something about us, whether we were valuable, whether we belong, whether we fit in, whether we are enough just the way we are, or whether we're lacking. And so these are just some of the ways that beliefs enter into our self-regard. Let's talk about self-actualization for a moment. So what we believe about what has meaning and purpose is what we're drawn to and what we're looking for, what we want more of in our lives. We want to be involved in what has meaning and purpose. We want to be fulfilled. And I thought that what was going to be meaningful and purposeful and fulfilling for me was to teach other people about emotional intelligence. And now that I'm coming towards the latter part of my career, nearing the end, it's changed a bit. What's fulfilling for me now is playing music for people at festivals, fairs, and here's a photo of me at a farmer's market. I love performing, and so beliefs can change is another key message here. That your belief in what had meaning for you earlier on might shift and change as you get older and you go through life. So this is a painting of my parents. No, I'm just kidding. It's not my parents, but it reminds me of my parents. My parents were the children of homesteaders on the prairies of Alberta, and they were practical, they were survivors, they were tough, and they were strong, and emotions didn't enter into the picture so much. And so I didn't get a whole lot of belief in, acknowledgement of the importance of emotions. There wasn't a lot of emotions expressed, so I got the idea that there weren't a lot of emotions to be aware of. And that's my origin story. What's your origin story in terms of what you believe about emotions? If you don't believe emotions are important, then of course this whole idea of being intelligent about emotions may be difficult as well. So a question for you: do you still believe what you were taught about emotions from your family of origin? My guess is that some of you do, and some of you don't. And again, I just want to say, if you don't believe what you were taught about emotions as a young person, good for you. Beliefs can change. Beliefs can shift. And we can progress in our beliefs. In light of new information, we can progress and believe differently. We don't have to be stuck in old school beliefs. We can change them. Moving right along, let's talk about emotional expression for a moment. And so here in BC, the BC Ambulance Service has this incredible campaign and this incredible course for first responders. And their tagline is "Share it, don't wear it." Imagine what first responders see on a daily basis: death, destruction, trauma, loss, grief and loss, and imagine what that does to someone if they never share it, if they don't talk about it. And the problem with the BC Ambulance Service was they were losing too many paramedics. People were committing suicide. They were off on stress leave. And again, if you believe that you're supposed to be tough and strong, and not just male paramedics, but female paramedics as well, thinking that you have to be tough and you got to be strong, and you can't talk about the trauma, how the trauma is affecting you. And you can see it written on this guy's face. I just feel this giant weight and I carry it everywhere. I can't unwind. Even when I take time off, I don't feel relaxed. I'm on edge. And so important questions here are: who do you let really see you, really see into you? Who do you share those emotions with? And Abraham Maslow said, "Choose courage over comfort," and made more recently famous by Brene Brown. But how can you choose courage over comfort more often? Because to share it means to be vulnerable. And the literal meaning of vulnerability is to open oneself up to harm, which nobody wants to do. So it takes courage to be vulnerable, but that's the only way that we can have a deeper connection with others. And so we have to be vulnerable in order to have good relationships. So how can we choose courage over comfort more often? Our mental health may, in fact, depend on it. With respect to assertiveness, what's the difference between assertive and being aggressive? The other woman says your gender. And the idea here is if a woman and a man are being equally assertive, the woman's assertiveness will be interpreted as aggressiveness by others. So Rudman and Phelan wrote a groundbreaking study back in 1998 called Backlash Effects for Disconfirming Gender Stereotypes in Organizations. They've done a lot of work since, but some of the observations that they've made, which is reinforced by the women in our women's leadership course and the women that we coach one-to-one, they talk about this, the idea that women are frequently strategically less assertive as a result because they believe that they can't be as assertive as men because they will be perceived as being aggressive. This idea of this value on likability and feeling like if you are assertive, you are somehow seen as less likable. And of course, you all know that when we see an assertive man, we call them a leader. And when we see an assertive woman, she sometimes gets called the B word. And it's sad and it's unfortunate and it's the wrong way to think about gender. But those beliefs are out there. They're out there in our society. We need to challenge them more often. We need to stand up against them more often. Interpersonal relationships is fascinating from a number of different perspectives. Here's a couple. As a species, we are evolving. We're evolving away from, and this is particularly noticeable in the corporate world, if you've been in the corporate world as long as I have, you know this, that organizations are moving away from autocratic authoritarianism. They don't want it anymore. It's not working for people. They want collaboration. They want leaders who can collaborate, leaders who can be inclusive, leaders who partner with others to get work done. And I put seriously in brackets because you might say, well, wait a minute, what's going on in the US right now seems like it's a lot of autocratic authoritarianism. Yep. And it's unfortunate. It's a blip. It will be seen as a blip in history is my prediction. It's not what anybody wants. That does not welcome people, does not invite people, does not support top performance, certainly in organizations. Now, this idea of the dominance and partnership paradigm, this comes from Riane Eisler, a wonderful UCLA professor, has written some wonderful books. And she says we don't have any hope of a world in which a dominance paradigm is maintained. We need to figure out how to move to a partnership paradigm. And the other words there come from the work of my wife Jill, who wrote a book which is used in women's shelters all over the world. Her area for many decades was violence against women in relationship, and her book is called When Love Hurts. And she talks about these ideas that when you come into a relationship from a dominance paradigm, what you really are thinking about yourself in relationship is that you are central, superior, and deserving. What many other people think when they're coming into a relationship in a partnership paradigm is they're thinking of themselves as mutual, equal, and respectful. And if you've got these two different sets of beliefs and you try to have a relationship, at best, you will be weakly connected. At worst, someone's probably being abused. So you know, this is how beliefs affect relationships in a huge way. So once again, we have to help people to understand that there are other ways to believe about being in relationship with others. And of course, in our workshops, we encourage people to use emotional expression to be vulnerable as a way of deepening and strengthening relationships. I picked the image because we used to do this exercise in workshops where we would have people get in an arm wrestling position, and then we'd tell them to touch the other person's hand to the table as many times as they could in a certain amount of time. And so some people got it right away, and they would collaborate with each other and just allow each other to push from side to side and count the number of times. Other people would think it was a competition. Great for use with reality testing and other aspects of emotional intelligence, but it also shows how some people enter into relationships in a competitive way versus in a collaborative or a partnership way. Moving right along, and by the way, I'm going to go very quickly and talk about a lot of things. If you have any comments or questions, please type them into the chat box. I'll be checking in with Lakey from time to time. By the way, Lakey, yes. Any comments or questions so far?
Actually, I do have one. So this is from Andrew. How can emotional intelligence aid in the workplace where there are different generational beliefs?
Excellent question, Andrew. Thank you for that. And of course, the different generations were influenced by different world events, and so it's a bit of an understanding of the different generations and what might be their interests and their needs. But when we talk about emotional intelligence, and this is an excellent slide to land on, if we can have empathy for the fact that people are coming from different places and may hold different beliefs about the world, about people, about relationships, if we can really create space to really listen to each other in terms of that empathy. And I know exactly what you mean, Andrew. I mean, I'm a baby boomer, and so some of the things that younger generations do, Jill and I, we kind of look at each other and wonder about those things. We don't let anybody see us doing that, but we do that in private. And of course, it's just about having more empathy for the different ways that people are socialized, and that it does create different needs or different interests in the world. So again, I think emotional intelligence can really help the generations to get together and really try to understand each other. So what is your impact on others? You only know about that by paying attention to the emotions of others, by trying to be in touch with their emotions, by asking in some cases. And if you care about others, you'll care about their emotions. But if you come from a dominance paradigm and your goal is to dominate others, then you'll be less likely to care about the emotions of others. So once again, what you believe about relationships with people is going to impact your EQ. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, emotional intelligence is the concept where we are trying to be more intelligent about emotions. EQ is a measure of that, and Reuven Bar-On coined that term in 1985 to refer to how well or maybe how ineffectively people are using their emotional intelligence skills. Social responsibility is supported by some very, very smart people. One is Abraham Maslow. Before he died, he said, you know what, my original hierarchy of needs, it's incomplete. It's actually the hierarchy of needs is for individuals, but it doesn't talk about this social world that we live in. Actually, there's another pyramid. It's inverted. It's on top of the original pyramid, and it's called transcendence. And it's all about the self-actualization of others. Stephen Covey wrote in The Eighth Habit that with the 7 habits, you can be effective, but you can move from effective to greatness by being involved in the 8th habit, which is social responsibility. And Martin Seligman said, you can't be authentically happy until you're involved in the happiness of others. And so this is all about the fact that we need each other. We need each other to support each other, to work together. Alone, I'm limited, but together we can do anything. And again, if you believe in the dominance paradigm, you'll be far less likely to care about giving to others and more about giving to yourself. And we see this with the many narcissistic, sociopathic dictators on our planet at present. We'll see if we have another one south of the border when he gets into office. problem solving is in the decision-making realm of the model. And it's really important what you believe about problem solving. If you believe that emotions cloud your judgment and that you can use logic in an emotional vacuum, then you do so at your peril, because what's going to happen, there are emotions there. And much better is to say, emotions are here, so what are they? How do I feel about this problem? Do I feel about this problem in a way that I'm likely to avoid it or procrastinate about it? And so let's identify those emotions that are going to support our success. We never work on problems, solve problems, approach problems in an emotional vacuum. We can't apply logic in an emotional vacuum. It's always, that's the way our brains work, is that our brains process information using our emotions to guide us and help us. And if we ignore them, we might just end up worrying, having anxiety, feeling overwhelmed, and getting stuck. And it's interesting that when we're stuck in a perspective, and perspectives are emotional. We like the perspective that we're stuck in, so much so that we refuse to get out of it and look for a new perspective. It's something that we coaches are trained to do, is to help people to get out of the perspective they're stuck in to find a better perspective. We often use the ladder of inference in our training, helping people to understand that this is the way that information is processed, and your beliefs absolutely play a role here. So we're all processing similar reality and facts. Where the difference is what we select to focus on. We select parts of reality to focus on based on our socialization, which lead to the beliefs that we have about which is important and which is not important to focus on. From that selected reality, we interpret that reality, we form our assumptions, our conclusions, which lead to our beliefs and our actions. So the first question here is, do you even believe it's important to test your reality, or do you believe that your perception of reality is accurate? We all have our own perception of reality. As far as we're concerned, that is our reality, but we don't know if it's shared by others. We don't know if it's a common reality. And so the question is not to ask if you're biased. The question to ask is, how am I biased? And one of the ways that you can learn more about your own bias is by taking the implicit association test, which is a Harvard University test that you can take to find out how biased you are. And all we can do is to make our unconscious biases more conscious. And I think that, first of all, if you haven't read White Fragility, it's an important book to read. But one of the things that Robin DiAngelo said is and it's an idea that is throughout her book, as a society, we don't understand socialization, and we don't. We think that some of the things that we believe are true. And one of those things is white supremacy, that many North Americans don't want to believe that they've been socialized to believe in white supremacy, and they will deny it, and that is white fragility. So Robin DiAngelo does a wonderful job of deconstructing that whole concept around white supremacy. So again, understanding information processing. Reality testing is ensuring that we test our perceptions, either by talking with others or the scientific method. Impulse control is one of those things that is critical for all of us. I chose the image because one of my other jobs after I was a ski instructor, I was an employment counselor in the Vancouver Parole Office. So one of my jobs was to go out to the prisons, make presentations out in the prisons, and see people when they got out, mostly men, when they were released into the community. And story after story after story of lack of impulse control. And I also think there's an interesting way that impulsivity is gendered. When men are impulsive, we sometimes interpret that as passion. And it's somehow more acceptable for men to be impulsive. When women are impulsive, we view it as carelessness, and it's unfair, and it's gendered, and again, it's whether we are aware of it and whether we challenge those beliefs, or whether we simply accept them as face value. flexibility. Do we believe flexibility is a good thing? Well, sometimes we do, and we particularly do when we want work done. We're going to look for a busy person who's going to be flexible and accommodating, and something that we again know from the work of Rudman, Phelan, and from our own experience in working with women leaders is that many women feel it's important to be likable. Therefore, they're more accommodating. They, again, going back to assertiveness, they don't say no, and which is, we need to use our assertiveness to manage our workloads, but instead they're accommodating and they're flexible. And again, if you believe that's important to be likable, then you may in fact be more flexible or more accommodating in order to get along in the workplace. Go along to get along, as they say. So some thoughts on flexibility. And yet, many leaders who have created big companies, some of the leaders in the news, like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos, would probably score lower in flexibility. They stick to something, they stick to a plan. They're not going to be pushed off. Nobody's going to talk them out of it. And we kind of reward that kind of lack of flexibility in men because they're taking a stand for something, and so there's kind of like a positive reinforcement for that. Stress tolerance. Here we are talking about men, and I thought this was some interesting data from a site called Priory, the Priory Group. It's a group out of the UK that tracks a lot of these statistics. They said 77% of men polled. This was 1,000 men they asked. 77% of them polled suffered with symptoms of common mental health conditions such as anxiety, stress, depression. 40% of men have never spoken to anyone about their mental health. Now, this is interesting, given that some other statistics say that women that women have worse mental health. They're trying to say, but men aren't talking about it. So how do you get that data when men are not admitting that they're also struggling? So that's interesting. 29% said they're too embarrassed to speak about it. 20% say there's a stigma on the issue. 80% of all suicides, US suicides, are men. 75% of all UK suicides are men. And so what's interesting about this, or kind of fascinating, is that when I used to ask audiences, I don't ask it anymore, it just creates issues, but when I used to ask audiences how many people think that men have higher stress tolerance on the EQI, well, they would say that they thought women scored higher on stress tolerance on the EQI. Now, remember, it's a self-report inventory, and men actually rate themselves higher because they believe that that's the way they're supposed to be. They are supposed to be able to tolerate stress. And if you look at some of the role models for that, they're the tough guys in the movies, and men identify with them and think that they should be that way. And once again, it all leads to this question: are your traditional beliefs about what it means to be a man putting you or someone else at risk? And so again, we need to challenge traditional beliefs where they don't serve us. And if we believe that stress tolerance is about denial and avoidance of stress, that is an absolutely unsustainable approach to stress. If we believe that stress tolerance is about emotional expression and talking about the difficulty and the challenge with supportive people, then that is a much more sustainable approach to tolerating stress. With optimism, I was thinking, what do you have to believe in order to be optimistic? And one of those beliefs is, I'm going to be okay. I believe my loved ones are going to be okay. I believe things are possible. And if you believe that, it's going to be much easier for you to be optimistic. And there are many interesting things about optimism, one of which is that optimism is attractive. If you don't believe you're going to be okay, if you don't believe your loved ones are going to be okay, and you don't believe things changing are possible, then you're going to have a much more difficult time being optimistic. And we have managers telling us, I'm not optimistic or pessimistic, I'm realistic. And I always have to remind them that there's nothing inherently wrong with that. However, what direct reports are looking for is they're looking to be inspired. And what inspires direct reports? Demonstrations, expressions of passion, talking about what's great about a project, what are the benefits, focusing on opportunities versus focusing on the challenges. That's optimistic, that's inspiring, that's motivating for teams and direct reports and others. Okay, so what's important to keep in mind moving forward here? And then we'll go to your questions. Some of the things that may be important to keep in mind are for you to personally, to identify the beliefs that may be holding you back from being more emotionally intelligent. What is it that you believe about emotions? What do you believe about expressing those emotions, finding your voice and expressing that to the world? We hear from some people, oh, I don't want to burden anyone with my emotions. And my question back to them is, okay, so do you think that the people who love you and care about you want to know what you might be challenged with or struggling with? Yes. Oh, okay, so how do you think they'll react if you told them? And the answer is usually, well, I think they'd probably be quite receptive to my talking about a challenge that I'm facing. And again, it's beliefs that stand in the way of them being more emotionally intelligent, getting the support that they need. So where did the beliefs come from? What purpose do they serve? Are they serving you now? Once again, this is a question we frequently ask people. We often say that rather than thinking about EQI scores as good or bad, right or wrong, think about them as the way that you're currently operating. And then ask, is this serving me well now? Or is it not serving you? Because again, we can change how you are using a particular EQ competency. We like to use the metaphor of the mixing board, people generally know the metaphor or what a mixing board is. You find them in a recording studio or a TV studio or a radio studio, and these sliders control aspects of sound. Now, what you would never do is push them all up to the very top. You'd never do that. Yeah, that would not give you the optimal mix to handle a situation or a circumstance or even go about your life. What you would do, though, is you would not pay attention to the board if you didn't know it was there. And a lot of people don't. But then when we tell them that it is there, and it's within each of our control, then it's about learning what those sliders do. There's 15 of them. Which sliders do you need for which circumstances? Of course, we unconsciously or subconsciously dial up and dial down EQ competencies all the time. If you're meeting a friend who's going through a difficult time, you're going to dial up your empathy. If you're meeting an employee who's not working to the standard, you're going to dial up your assertiveness to have that conversation. But the more we know about each of the dials, the more we understand what we could do if we really learn to use it effectively, then we can be much more aware of our behavior, much more intentional about our behavior, and move toward our goals in a much more efficient manner. And so we need to know what beliefs are getting in the way of us reaching down and controlling our own mixing board. And we need to change them. We need to modify them. Beliefs are not likely to be thrown out and replaced wholesale. What they are more likely is to be modified. So how can you modify your beliefs in light of your new awareness? And then here's a great check-in question. Do my beliefs serve me? And then after answering the question whether your beliefs serve you, ask the all-important question, do my beliefs serve my loved ones? Do my beliefs serve my children, my spouse, my friends, my extended family, my community? Do my beliefs serve my boss, my work team, and or my direct reports? Again, know that beliefs can change and do. And again, how can you evolve yourself? We're all evolving, different rates. How can you move from old school beliefs to new school beliefs in light of new information? What beliefs are worth holding on to? What beliefs are worth radical modification. If you have beliefs that came from your parents and they are somehow not serving you or not serving others, maybe there's something good in those beliefs or that set of beliefs. Keep that. But then the harmful parts, the parts that cause other people to feel like they don't belong, like they're not worthy, or that they don't measure up, change those parts. And this will help all of us to become more emotionally intelligent. So that's what I wanted to tell you today. I'll just say a quick thank you. And there's our website, eitc.ca. We have another website, which is our article site, which is emotionalintelligence.ca, which you can check out anytime. And I would love to take your questions. Oh, by the way, if you want the resources, please send me an email, and I'll be happy to respond with, I'll send you the PowerPoint slides and a list of resources that I mentioned during the presentation as well. Okay, Lakey, what questions do we have?
Okay, so a comment first. This is from Chris. I'm noticing a lot about gender beliefs in this presentation. As a business and leadership coach, this is interesting as implicit bias about gender seems to drive much in the business world. A question. For change-resistant individuals, what is an approach to first challenge and inspire beliefs about beliefs themselves?
Yeah, interesting question. What I do with many people who hold beliefs that might be a little bit old school is ask them whether they've noticed a change in how things go from when they first started their careers to now, and the answer is yes. And so they start talking about some of the newer thinking and about their opinions about that newer thinking, and so it's often an opportunity for me as a coach to listen non-judgmentally and to just talk about some of these beliefs in terms of costs and benefits. And sometimes there's no real benefit. It just is kind of an unexamined belief, but the cost is that it could, in fact, cause some people to feel like they're not valued or that they don't belong. That is the culture that most organizations are trying to change in light of the focus on psychological safety. So again, these are things that we didn't think about decades ago. Psychological safety, you just did what you had to do, and that was more of a dominance model. But again, we're changing that, and we're trying to partner with people to do the work. So talk about the idea that some beliefs actually hurt others.
That was great. Thank you. The next one is from Lewis. If our beliefs are shaped by culture, are there cultural EQ differences?
Yeah, again, another really interesting question. I would say that one of my presentations at an international EQ conference was on cultural differences in EQ, and really, rather than talk about cultural differences in EQ, what I talked about was the data suggests that that while there aren't a lot of big differences or significant differences in culture, what the difference is in what anthropologists or sociologists call display rules. So what might be an emotionally intelligent behavior in one culture might not be an emotionally intelligent behavior in another culture. So culture is different. You really have to know the culture that you're working within. Reuven Bar-On himself concluded that his model was universal, but after having used it in many cultures and realizing that these 15 emotional skills are critical and important in every culture. Again, just what's different is how they are actualized, what they look like when people behave according to them.
Thank you. Now we have another question. What themes or trends are you seeing in leadership development focus?
Yeah, a great question, and the answer is that that most organizations are moving towards a greater collaboration and greater team effectiveness, and they're using data like from Project Aristotle at Google, which looked at 160 teams and tried to determine what the number one high performance factor, or the top high performing factors are, and the number one top performing team factor was psychological safety. So and then Amy Edmondson went on to say in her book, The Fearless Organization, that many managers don't have enough emotional intelligence to create psychological safety. So thank you, Amy Edmondson. And this is, this is frequently what we're addressing with teams, is how can we create better psychological safety? And FYI, Amy Edmondson has a great 5-minute psychological safety audit that you can download from the web. So type in psychological safety audit and you'll find Amy Edmondson's questions, which you can discuss with your team. What's interesting about that 5-minute safety audit is if you don't have psychological safety on your team, people will not answer honestly to the questions. So that's interesting.
Very true. David, we have time for one more question. This is from Gabby. How can a leader use emotional intelligence to persuade someone to their point of view?
To persuading someone to your point of view is not the best goal. The best goal is learning. So if you, again, you can always play the positional authority card, but we always suggest going for the relationship first. And so what that is talking about, is explaining, more about about how you're feeling about this particular perspective or point of view. And when you can share that, then invite the other person to share why they disagree or whether they have something better. Now you're changing it from a directive, you must believe my way, to a real collaboration. Where people don't feel like they're powerless, but they feel like you've empowered them to share their point of view. And we need to do more of that. And as we frequently say, culture changes one interaction at a time. And what I mean by that is that in every interaction with every other person, you have an opportunity to change how you do things or do things the way you've always done them.
Thank you, David. And on that note, this wraps up the webinar series. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And thank you again, David, for such an engaging webinar.
Thanks, Lakey.
Have a great day,
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.